Hello, and welcome back to the Be a Better You podcast. I am your host, Allison K. Dagny, and I'm so happy that you've decided to join me today. On this episode, I'm going to be talking about the fascinating world of neuroplasticity and your brain's ability to reorganize itself and change by forming new neural connections throughout your life. And this isn't just scientific jargon, it's a hopeful reality that each of us can harness to fundamentally transform our lives. So I'm going to be breaking down the basics of neuroplasticity today and explaining how every new skill that you learn and every new experience absorbed and every thought that we entertain can reshape your brain's structure. So this adaptability is really important because it means that change is not only just possible, it's within our grasp at any stage of life. So I'm going to be also sharing a personal story that I recently went through where I found myself triggered and I want to give you that story so that you understand that yes, coaches are human too and we experience these same things. So the good news is the principles of neuroplasticity that I've actively applied in my life and I have been practicing helped me tremendously to get through this moment. So join me, stay tuned because we're going to explore how to harness the incredible power of our minds while I'm offering a practical tip at the end. So make sure you listen all the way through to start helping yourself move these neuro connections in your brain in your everyday life. That's really, really simple. So the first thing that I want to talk about when we're talking about neuroplasticity in action is what neuroplasticity really is and kind of break that down to you. And I'm going to help you understand like why the science behind this can actually give us so much greater success for our emotional abuse recovery. And I'm going to offer you a few tips in here, and that way you have some things to take away from this episode using neuroplasticity for yourself. So first and foremost, I want to tell you just like a quick overview of neuroplasticity and its impact on how you change yourself. And essentially, neuroplasticity is just your brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections throughout your life. So anytime that you learn something new, you're creating these new connections, right? Well, what happens is over time, those connections remain on a specific type of path, right? So if you're learning how to write as a child, your brain starts to create these connections so that you get really skilled at doing what you're doing, right? So it would be hard for you to unwire the skill of learning how to write because you've created those neural connections in your brain for so long and it's become habitual, it's become very innate inside of you, right? So this is very similar to what happens when we have triggers or we have emotional responses to things. It's no different because we have created neural pathways in our brain to help us adapt to whatever circumstances that we're going through. So the good news is neuroplasticity, all that means is that the brain is not fixed, right? But it is adaptable, just like that's why it's called plasticity, because it's like plastic, right? Because it's moldable and it's changeable. So every time that we're learning something new or we're experiencing something new, our brain either strengthens those existing connections inside of our brain between the neurons, right? Or it forms new connections. And this is how we form habits and how we can change our behaviors and even our thought patterns. So let me give you an example to illustrate this. So like if you're learning a new skill, like if you're learning to play the piano for the very first time, the parts of your brain that are responsible for music and finger coordination, right? They start to grow and strengthen the more that you practice it, right? Even like recovering from injury, right? If somebody has a stroke, the brain can reorganize itself and it can actually get more control over lost functions and maybe even like develop new abilities. So it has been proven that people who've had brain injuries actually can heal from a lot of these things because your brain is so good at repair. Now, because of neuroplasticity, right, we actually have the power to shape our brains continuously through our actions, right? But that's key, right? We have to be taking action. We also have the power to shape it through our thoughts and the experiences that we live out. So this means that changing your brain is always possible, and we are not stuck with the brain in its current state, but we can improve it to help enhance and enrich our lives, okay? So I want to tell you this story that happened to me. Like I said before, I got a lot of flack for this on social media. I'll just be really honest with you. I was trying to tell a story about my own personal transformation and how my own neuroplasticity helped me. And I posted it on my Facebook group. I posted it on my Facebook page. I put it on Threads, and I put it on my stories on Instagram. And I really was, trying to see how it would perform on those different platforms, because as a business owner, that's part of what I do. I'm trying to reach more people and trying to get more engagement on my posts. So I was like, I'll just post the same thing on all these different areas and see what happens. And in my Facebook group, there was a lot of people who were very empathetic and kind and understood. A few that were not so much. And then Threads, there was a lot of very, very negative responses to my story, and I'll share what that story is. But the reason I'm telling you this, one, I know that the people who reacted the way they reacted are reacting because of their own perceptions and their own thoughts and their own beliefs, right? So anytime people react a certain way towards anything, it's because of their own brain programming and their own brain's wiring and their inability to think in different ways, right? So they immediately go to whatever it is that they've been programmed with throughout their lives. Now, I have been practicing rewiring and reprogramming my brain for years now, and I also help other women do the same thing. I've become very, very skilled at this. The process that I use, you do it on paper, you do it consistently, and you do it over time. And within a few short months, you're really starting to change those neural pathways in your brain. Now, as you get really good at it, you often don't have to put it on paper because it's part of muscle memory now. It becomes very, very easy to shift these things automatically. So the caveat here is that we can't predict every experience or everything that's going to happen in our lives. And often, things will come up that we've never dealt with before. Things will come up that we've never experienced emotionally. And this actually just happened to me, so I wanted to share it. And this is the thing that I posted. So my daughter was going off to college for the very first time. It's not far away from where I live, but she's going off a few hours away. And since her and my ex, so her father and me are not together, and we do not have a good relationship. We do not have like a tumultuous relationship, or like we don't fight or like anything like that. It's just I choose not to interact with him because of the abuse that he put me through for so long. So we don't have like, we're not friendly. We don't like joke around. Like if we have to be around each other, it's pretty much like we just keep our distance. Well, my daughter had come to me a few days before leaving for college, and she sat down at the table and she said, hey, I just want to let you know that Dad and Lacey, I'm using the name Lacey, that's not her real name, but that's the name I'm using because that's the name I'm going to call her in my next book. But Dad and Lacey are going to be there, and I really don't want there to be any like weird vibes or, looks or confrontation or like anything like that. And I said, of course not, because that's not how I operate. And I said, I totally get that. I totally understand that will never, ever happen. And then she said to me, and this is where, when I posted this, I got a lot of flack for this. But you know what? I'm just going to be honest and be vulnerable about my emotions and my feelings. And she said to me, Lacey has been looking for a shirt that she could wear for my school. And she was looking for a stepmom one, but she couldn't find a stepmom one. She could only find a mom one. So she's probably going to be wearing that. And I just wanted you to know. And I didn't have an emotional response or an emotional reaction to it. I did feel something inside. I knew there was like an emotion or like something was triggering me, but I couldn't identify really what that was in that very second, but I knew something was there. And so I said, okay. And I didn't say anything else after that. Well, a little while later, I went outside to talk to my boyfriend about it, and I started feeling emotional. And I couldn't figure out, like, in that moment, why I was feeling emotional. And I remember, I've never had a child go off to college. I've never experienced, a stepmother situation with my children where she would be in that kind of role with a shirt that said mom on it when I'm the biological mother. Like, this was very new. This was all very new. The relationship I have with Lacey is very, very surfacey. I've never had like a deep conversation with her. It's more like, hi, how are you? Blah, blah, blah. I do know different things about her based on what my children have told me about her personality and like things like that. But the most important thing is that I know that she is very kind to my children, and she's not some sort of like mommy dearest or evil stepmother. She's very loving and kind and caring, which is important, and I definitely want to make sure that I put that out there. I don't have any reason to dislike her or hate her for any reason, which I don't. There have been a few things in the past, but I'm not going to get into that. But I don't have any bad blood with her, so that's what I wanted to make sure that I expose here. Now, the thing that happened after I went to talk to my boyfriend, and I started feeling emotional about it, and that like during our conversation about it and me kind of expressing myself, right? Because here's the thing, when you vent out your emotions and your feelings and your thoughts to someone or on paper, what you're doing is you're revealing your subconscious beliefs. And this is how I often do it for myself and how I help my clients do it as well, is I need to know, like, what are your judgments? And we can't be judging ourselves on our judgments. We just have to be real, and we have to be really honest about it. And so the very first thing that I thought of when I was talking to him was that I felt like that my daughter should have told Lacey that was inappropriate and she should not have worn a shirt like that. Right now, this is my own insecurity in that moment that I was feeling, right? Because there's lots and lots of layers when it comes to your beliefs, and it's like an iceberg, right? And there's a lot of stuff under the surface, and so it might not just be one thing. There could be lots and lots of things. And for me, the very first thing that I thought of was like, my daughter should be behaving in a certain type of way. Why? To protect me. Like, that was the original like belief that I had. Now, I was getting a lot of judgment about this, right? I was getting a lot of judgment online about the feelings that I was having about it, right? Because other people aren't inside my brain, and other people don't have the same perceptions and experiences that I do. They don't have the same trauma. They don't have the background, right? So they're going to be making their judgments based on their filter, right? Not my filter. So the initial thought was that my daughter should have said something. And then I started to think about, well, wait a second, let me think about this differently. And this is all in the span of just like a few minutes. I remember back when I was getting married to my daughter's father, and I was 21 years old. And we had gone to, and I wrote about this in my book, we had gone to buy a wedding dress. And my mother-in-law was there and my mother was there. And my mother was feeling very either left out or slighted because my mother-in-law was being so overtly aggressive about wanting to pay for my dress and like, bringing her veil so that I could try it on and like all these things. And my mom was having her own emotions about it. But I'm 21 years old. I'm in the middle of getting married. I'm not thinking about these things. I'm literally in my own little bubble, and I'm not worried about my mommy's emotions and feelings at that time. Maybe I should have been, but I wasn't. That was just the reality. I was completely absorbed. I was worried about making everybody happy, and my husband to be at the time, he was, on the phone. Everything was like, it was just not a great situation. So it was hard for me at that time in my life to really be worried about speaking up for my mom in that moment. And I didn't probably even have the courage to do it because of the situation that I was in at the time, and not wanting to rock the boat, not wanting to upset people, having these like kind of people pleasing tendencies and all these things, right? So all that has to be considered, right? And so when I started thinking about, well, wait a minute, I didn't do that either, right? Does it make it right? Do we need to condone it? Do we need to say, oh yeah, you did everything the right? No, absolutely not. But now I'm looking at it with a different lens, because my judgment of how my daughter should have been operating, right, was based on something that I was dealing with inside, right? But when I started to shift this and started to see, well, wait a second, she's getting ready to go off to college. She's really excited. She's 18. She's in her own little bubble, right? And somebody who cares about her a lot, right, is excited to wear a shirt and support her and be a bonus mom to her. That's actually a really wonderful thing, right? And so I had to start shifting my thinking about this. Now, all this happened within a span of a few moments, right? As I'm talking about it and bringing all these things to the surface, right? If I had been wanting to be in this anger or frustration or sadness feeling, it probably would have been me just not willing to look at the other possibilities. It would have been me saying, she should do this and she shouldn't wear that and that's inappropriate, it's totally totally out of line, blah blah blah, I'm the mom. Like, I could have gone down that road, right? But because of the neuroplasticity that I've built in my brain over the years, it was so quick that I was able to shift this, that what happened was the emotions started to move out of the way, right? Because my thoughts and my thinking were creating the feelings. We're creating all that stuff that initially had created that trigger for me. So as I am shifting my thinking about it in the moment, as I'm talking through it with my boyfriend, and then trying to kind of make sense of the things that weren't making sense in my brain, as this happened, what I ended up doing was move the emotion out of the way so that I didn't have to feel that way anymore. So then what was it? Like, that was a Monday. Then Tuesday was just, the next day that we weren't moving into college. And then Wednesday we were moving into college. So I had literally been able to release the emotions that I didn't want to be feeling, because what I wanted to happen was I wanted to go down, take her down to college, and not be affected by anything. Whether Lacey wore the shirt, whether she didn't wear the shirt, and by the way, she didn't wear it actually. But I could have been totally triggered. I could have been, angry, boiling. I could have been having all kinds of negative feelings and not be present with the experience of moving my daughter into college. So we drove her down there. We got all the things unloaded out of the cars and started taking it into her new room, her new dorm room. And her dad and stepmom hadn't arrived yet. They came a little bit later. But when they got there, it was very pleasant. It was chit chat, like, I wasn't speaking to my ex, but I did talk to Lacey, and she used to go to the same college, and so we were just having like just kind of very surfacey, general, nicey conversation. It was a very pleasant experience, and I really truly believe that if I had not worked on rewiring my brain for as long as I have been doing it, and then experience something that I had never felt before, right? This was very new to me. I've worked on a lot of other things related to my healing and, codependency and rumination and all kinds of other things that have been programmed from childhood and I've been conditioned with in my abusive relationship. So I have worked, very, very hard on utilizing my own neuroplasticity to change my brain so I won't be triggered by things, I won't be upset by things. However, this was something I'd never felt before. This was very, very new. This had to do with my daughter and her moving to college and those emotions and like all these other new things that I had never felt before. However, the good news was my brain was already primed for shifting and changing. This wasn't hard to do because I'd already had so much practice previous to it, right? So this, to me, this would be similar to if you were learning how to write, right? You're learning how to write as a child and your brain is already primed to know how to use a pencil and a pen, right? But then as you get a little bit older and more experienced, maybe you want to try calligraphy, right? And so your brain is already primed to have that, tactile function, to be able to do writing in such a way that you can actually expand on it. So to me, it's no different when you're rewiring your brain for things that you don't want to be triggered on or things that you're trying to help yourself heal through. So it's very, very, very helpful if you have the right tools to be able to do this. So I just wanted to share the story because, and I'll go back to really briefly about, people were very, very nasty and very shameful or shaming towards me. Like, you shouldn't feel that way and get over yourself. And I actually told the whole story. Like, I told the whole story from beginning to end and how the transformation was, but a lot of people weren't reading that. They were just reading like the very first thing that I posted. And so there was a lot of judgment. And obviously I know that people are judging because of their own filters and their own programs. So I did end up deleting it because it was just very, very negative, and I don't want to breed negativity because I think it's more important to focus on the positive stuff. But I wanted to share this with you guys because I feel like it's really important for you to know that it's so very possible for you to change your brain too if you're using the right tools and the principles of neuroplasticity. Now, the thing that I did, right, was rapid reprogramming. That's something that I've been doing for years. That's something that I've been helping my clients with for years. And this is something that has become more automatic for me. And it is also becoming automatic for my clients the more that they do it as well. So, and you've heard me talk about this on many, many episodes of this podcast. So I'm sure you're very familiar with, the concepts that I'm discussing here. Now, initially there was that trigger and there was that challenge of, how do I deal with this? How do I handle it? But I already have the tools. So I know exactly what to do when anything like that happens. So I feel really empowered when something else happens. Like, what happens when my daughter has a child or she gets married or these are things I've never experienced before. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what those emotions are going to be like. And I don't even really know how I'm going to get ahead of those things. But I do know that I have something that is very, very powerful that will help me whenever I need it so that I can be present, enjoy my family, not be clouded by anger, negativity, frustration, sadness, or whatever. Like, I can actually just be at peace and be happy, with whatever the situation is. Now, one thing I want to talk about is the scientific explanations for why these techniques actually worked for me and why they work, if you work them, right, why they work for other people as well. And the reason why, and this is probably a whole entire episode in itself, but the reason why that the technique that I use works is because it is rooted in changing the neural pathways of your brain that are on this negative path or the painful path, moving it to the positive path because you are working with your subconscious mind that's driving 95% of the show, right? I've said this before. If you're in a tug of war, 95 equally able-bodied people against 5, chances are, if everybody's about the same height and weight and strength, the 95 is going to win out every time. And that's no different with your subconscious mind. So what about changing what's going on in your subconscious mind so that you can actually show up differently and feel differently in your life, right? So if you want to think about these neural pathways in your brain as a big field of grass, you're going from one end of the field to the other end of the field. And every day you take that same pathway. Well, that's what's happening in your brain, right? You're creating a habit and you're creating this neural pathway, a pathway in your brain, just like a pathway through a field. And you're always going to be taking the path of least resistance because it's easier. However, it might not be the best thing for you, right? If you're believing the path of least resistance thought is that it takes forever to heal, it takes forever to heal, it takes forever to heal, right? And you're believing this and you haven't considered other possibilities, well, chances are it's going to take forever to heal, right? But what if you started thinking, wait a second, it doesn't take forever to heal for Allison, and it didn't take forever to heal for her clients, and it didn't take forever to heal from all these other people who use the same methodology. So maybe if I'm using the right tools, it won't take me forever to heal too, right? And so then you create a new neural pathway, and then you're able to take action because you have a different belief that you've created, right? So the action behind that is, oh, maybe I should try something new, right? Maybe I can actually make some changes if I take XYZ steps. Downloading my free deconditioning workbook. Maybe that's listening to an Audible book on rewiring your brain or whatever, right? Like there's all different kinds of things that you can do, but you can't do it if you have the belief that it's going to be so hard, right? Your brain isn't even going to let you go there because it doesn't believe that that's even possible, okay? Taking what we know is useful, helpful, and effective, right? Tools like rapid reprogramming to change your brain. Now, there are other tools out there, right? I've seen lots of, I don't know about these, like I haven't used some of these tools, but there are other subconscious brain training tools out there. I can't speak for them because obviously I've never used them. Now, this one that I use in particular, I have proof positive that it works, right? If you put in the practice, right? If you're somebody who's like, I'm never going to do it, I can't stick to anything, right? Obviously, those are beliefs as well, and you would want to challenge those beliefs. But if you're able to like say, hey, you know what? If somebody just gives me the instructions and somebody just tells me what to do, I'll do it. And then I will heal, right? And that's all you have to do. So when we're talking about, neuroplasticity and the science behind this, right? These approaches work because we are utilizing the part of the brain that's driving the show, right? Versus trying to use the part of the brain that is based on willpower. That's your conscious brain. That's only running 5%. So that's why people, when they start New Year's resolutions, the majority of them fall off within the first couple of weeks because they're using their conscious brain. They're saying, oh, I'm going to start this thing and I'm going to get healthy and I'm going to, be vegan and I'm going to do a workout routine. I'm going to lose weight or whatever, right? There is a lot of motivation there, right? And that's your 5% saying you can do it. But what happens and the reason why people fall off is because the power in that 95% is really the things that are saying like, you can't stick to anything, you're not good enough, you'll never make it, it's too hard, it's impossible, right? Those are the things that are actually driving the show. So no matter how much you want it and how much you say you're going to do it, that's only 5%. The strength is in what you believe. So if you can change, well, first you have to figure out what that is that's in your subconscious, but once you figure that out, then you start to shift that. That's what changes everything. And then if you have beliefs like I can do it and I am capable and it's not going to be as hard as I think and I have done hard things and I can do difficult things, right? When you start shifting that using the right tools, then you feel differently and then you behave accordingly, right? If you feel really good about something, aren't you more likely to want to go outside or interact with people? Like if you're in a good mood, right, and you feel good, you're going to act accordingly, right? If you're feeling sad and you're feeling bummed, you're going to put your head under the blankets and you're not going to come out of your room for a week, right? Because your emotions are dictating your behaviors. But the thoughts in your subconscious mind are dictating the emotions. So let's not do this backwards. Let's get to the root. Let's go to the source, change the thinking to change the emotions, to change the behaviors, okay? And that's exactly what happens and what happened to me in my story as well. Now, I was able to shift it pretty quickly because I've been doing this for a really long time, but it can happen for you too if you're willing to commit to yourself and put in the practice, okay? One thing I will leave you with, a tip that you can use for you to start rewiring your brain, okay? This is really this isn't going to be like for big emotional things. What I'm talking about here is just to get your brain to start doing things differently, is put your pants on with the other foot first. Brush your teeth with the other hand. Take a different route to work that you think you can, or maybe not work, because maybe if you don't want to be late, but maybe to the grocery store, and don't use your GPS, right? The reason we're doing this is because new learning creates new neural pathways. So if your brain is already primed to do this, it's going to be easier for you to shift out of things that are already very, very ingrained. So this is part of neuroplasticity as well. So take these like very, very basic things that you can do and start to be mindful about what you're doing, right? Because a lot of times we just do things so automatically we don't even think about it. But if you start to do things that you know you do automatically and start to change them a little bit, then your brain starts creating new neural pathways, right? I can do this one particular way, but I can also do it a different way. And your brain starts to shift. It starts to change these neural pathways. And I'm not saying this is going to change your emotions, but what it does is it kind of primes your brain to be able to make shifts when it's time for you to actually make these big emotional changes that you want to make, right? So if you're feeling really frustrated or you're feeling really sad, right? Your brain already knows how to make these shifts, and it just makes it all the easier for you. So start practicing that. Pick something, if you're always holding your phone a certain type of way, start holding it a different type of way. It doesn't have to be anything humongous or like massive. It just has to be something that you're mindful about, that you're shifting, that you do it in a different way, right? Because if you're always washing the dishes a certain type of way, start washing it a different type of way. If you're always putting things on the right side, maybe shift it to the left side. It doesn't matter. It just has to be enough for your brain to be like, oh, this is different. This is different, right? Because what you're doing is you're taking your brain off of autopilot. And that is so key. Put yourself back in the driver's seat so that you can make these changes for yourself. So I hope this has been a helpful episode for you. I hope you've enjoyed the story that I shared. That was a vulnerable thing for me to put out there, but I also want you to know that, just because I'm a coach doesn't mean I'm not human and I don't struggle with things too. I absolutely do. But my life is much, much better and much easier because of the tools that I have, because I'm not in this constant state of anxiety, worry, frustration, guilt, like none of that. I am able to process these things so much faster and so much quicker and get out of these emotions that I don't want to be feeling and be present with my family and the people who I love. So just as a quick recap here, neuroplasticity is very, very, very powerful. If you are using it for your benefit, you can change your brain in response to new learnings and new experiences. I hope you enjoyed the story that I shared. Everything is wonderful and happy. My daughter's off to college. Everything is great. I'm so happy. It was a wonderful day. And if you've experienced things like this too that have triggered you, but you've actually spun out, it's been distracting, you haven't been able to be present, try out one of the tips that I said or come up with your own tip. Just all you have to do is start thinking of things that you do out of habit. Right? What do you do out of habit? One specific type of way. And a real easy one is like maybe changing up your routine in the morning. Like if you're always getting a shower and then you put your makeup on first, then you dry your hair, then you get dressed. Maybe you do it in a different order. Maybe you get dressed first and then you put your makeup on and then you dry your hair or whatever, right? So like just try to think of ways that you can start to shift your brain very, very simply so that it's primed when you're ready to start doing the bigger changes. Now, I wanted to remind you that I have a lot of resources for you to get support. If you're interested in working with me one-on-one, there is a form you can fill out on my website at radiate, the letter N, rise.com, and you can schedule a free 30-minute consultation with me to learn more about my one-on-one program. If you're not ready for that yet, I do have other resources, such as a 7-week I'm Worthy immersion program. That is a self-paced course you can take online by yourself. I also have a community of people who come together to do healing tools and activities in a safe incognito space. So check out those resources on my website on the menu at the top of my website on the left. And if there's something that I can help you with or a different type of direction that I can point you in, please don't hesitate to reach out and let me know. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, or email me at allison@radiateandrise.com. Thanks for being here, and I'll talk to you next week.